The following is a Goulash Media production. goulashmedia.net.
Welcome to the System is Down.
Hello, hello. What is up, Downers? Welcome back to the very least comfortable show on the web. It is, of course, The System is Down, the place where we talk about all the uncomfortable topics, the taboo topics, the things that trigger you, the things that go bump in the night, the things like conspiracies, politics, and religion, or as I say, things that your family prays you don't bring up around the Thanksgiving dinner table. We talk about all of them. Nothing is off the table, and we do so in a very humble, civil, open-minded fashion. And I know we have a lot of new listeners tuning in right now, so welcome. If you're new here, welcome. Go find the person who invited you, give him a big hashtag #MeToo, kiss on the mouth, and slap on the rear from you and from me, because I appreciate you being here, and because I know that you're going to enjoy it. And I know you're going to enjoy it because of what today is. Today's episode is something unprecedented, not just for this show, but unprecedented for pretty much anybody in any show and anything on the internet. This is something that doesn't happen too often. We got 12 Libertarian presidential candidates on a panel to host a debate, a full live stream debate. You can still check out the live stream on our Facebook page if you're interested in the completely raw, unedited version of this. However, I did want to also put it in this edited platform. None of the content is edited, but putting in the tags and the promotions and stuff like that. I wanted to do this to make sure that we have a clean version for everybody to hear that possibly can. We can put it up on other platforms like YouTube, BitChute, etc. So, welcome to the show, and we're going to jump into that here momentarily. But before we do, I got to remind you guys about our sponsor. Today's episode is sponsored by Brave Botanicals. And Brave Botanicals, if you're not familiar, they are basically your one-stop shop for all natural life, health, and mood-enhancing products like Kratom, CBD, natural hand sanitizers, vitamins, minerals, and much more. I personally use their Kratom on a very regular basis, and it has helped me immensely with focus, energy, and even my overall mood. It gives me a nice, kind of glowy pick-me-up. My personal go-to is their White Lightning, and I cannot recommend it highly enough. Anybody who listens to this show gets a 5% discount on their entire order by using the promo code TSID. Also, if you would like to just try Kratom out, you can get a small ounce of Kratom for absolutely free by going to freeounceofkratom.com, entering the promo code TSID. So if you're looking for all natural products to help with pain relief, focus, addiction, stress, and so much more, go get your free Kratom trial and 5% off any order from Brave Botanicals by visiting freeounceofkratom.com and entering the promo code TSID. Let them know that we are the ones who sent you. Also, if you are not a member of the Downers Club, please consider joining. Please consider sponsoring the show yourself. People who join the Downers Club for as little as $5 a month get bonus episodes of the show every single week. So if you like what you hear and you want to hear more, you can hear the after party from this. You can hear the after party that Craig and Kayla and I did, where we're just venting, having some drinks and venting about how the debate went. You can get some behind the scenes looks at stuff. We do all sorts of things, movie and TV reviews, and a bunch of other fun stuff. So if you want to help this show grow, it's because of you guys that we were able to live stream this. You helped us get our internet souped up to the point where we could do live streaming again and be able to host this debate. So thank you guys so much. And if you're not in there, please go check out the Downers Club at patreon.com/The System is Down. All right, that's enough. That's enough of that. Let's get into what you're here for, which is, of course, the first ever TSID 2020 Libertarian presidential candidate debate. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's get weird. I am excited to welcome you all to the very first TSID Libertarian presidential live stream debate. I would first and foremost like to thank everyone for joining us tonight and everyone who helped spread the word about this event. Please continue to share the live stream tonight so we can get these important messages of liberty and liberty candidates out to as many people as possible. Given the unprecedented circumstances that we are all experiencing because of this quarantine nonsense, most of the campaign tours, conventions, and debates that were originally scheduled have been delayed or canceled, making it much harder for these candidates and these fine men to share their platform with the people who need to hear them. Our primary goal with this debate is to do our part and to do what we can with our platform here on The System is Down to help the candidates get their names and messages to as many ears as possible in these uncertain times. This evening, our debate is featuring 12 candidates who are seeking the Libertarian nomination for President of the United States. Tonight's debate will be hosted and moderated by me, Dan Smots, from Aledo, Illinois, and I'm joined in second chair by Craig, who's on screen. Craig, wave your hand and say hello. Hello. He's of Cedar Rapids, Iowa. He will be moderating and keeping track of the times and the order and all that legal nonsense. In third chair back here off screen behind me, she's off screen and off mic, is my lovely wife and co-host, moderator, and technology director, Kayla. She will be overseeing our live stream, alerting us of any unlikely but potential issues, as well as continuing online promotions of tonight's debate on as many platforms as we possibly can, spamming, if you will. If there is any issue with our stream, the debate will continue as planned. It will be recorded and posted on social media afterwards, on all the platforms and at our website, tsidpod.com. At this time, I would like to introduce our wonderful candidates in alphabetical order. Taking part in tonight's debate is, first, Ken Armstrong, Dan Behrman, Kenneth Blevins, Judge Jim Gray, Jacob Hornberger, Adam Kokesh, John McAfee, John Monds, Sam Robb, Vermin Supreme, and Andy Williams Jr. Anybody I'm missing? Are we all good?
I forgot me there.
Arvin?
Yeah.
Shit. That's heavy on my list. Arvin Vohra.
Don't try to censor me, Daniel. I already know that game already.
Off to a good start. Additionally, Mark Whitney was scheduled to join us, but has since suspended his campaign and will not be with us here tonight. Okay. Here's our format for tonight's debate. Opening and closing statements will be 90 seconds each. Candidates are allotted 1 minute to respond to each question. Candidates speaking beyond their allotted time, and this is important, guys, listen. You're speaking beyond your time. Candidates speaking beyond their allotted time will have that time deducted from their closing statements. Keep that in mind as you get long-winded. You will hear this bell when you have 10 seconds remaining on your response. Can everybody hear the bell?
Yes, I have a question. Here.
Yes, sir.
Does the reverse also work? If we stop half a minute early, do we get another 30
You do not
seconds?
get extra time, so feel free to.
Just curious. All right, fair. Then.
I tried that in Illinois, John.
Yeah, we can only keep track of so many things. If a candidate is mentioned by name, that candidate may offer up to 30 seconds for their rebuttal. No addition time will be given to the original speaker, so it is in each candidate's best interest to focus on issues. Ergo, there's not going to be any bickering back and forth. There will be a 10-minute intermission at the halfway point around the 8 to 8:10 p.m. Central Time, where we will, go pee and do all the things that humans do. Now, with the debate rules established, let us begin. Any other questions before we get started? Nope. All right. Well, on that note, we will start and begin with opening statements, beginning with Ken Armstrong.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here tonight, and I'm glad to see all these handsome gentlemen, and I won't mention any names, but the exceptions to that. So it is really good to see. It's good to be here, and I'm grateful that we do have opportunities to continue in this strange new world that we're in. And speaking of that, I've been talking for a year now about why experience counts, about why it matters that I've got a background in federal healthcare management and a background in disaster response. And now all of a sudden, these things actually matter. And we see, as a matter of fact, on the stage, on the federal stage now, all of the conflicting news that's coming at us and all of the mismanagement of the response at both the federal and state levels. And it really points up why we need somebody with a steady hand on things who understands how federal plans work, how disaster preparedness works, how federal health care is delivered and why it shouldn't be delivered, and all of those things. I've been asking people if you like the way that the COVID-19 response is going, is that the way that you want your health care administered? But we're watching a federal government in meltdown right now. They can't even decide if Congress is in session or what the president's rightful role is. We need a steady hand at the tiller, and I believe with my background, we'll find that I'm the guy to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Armstrong. And Dan Behrman, go ahead.
Dan, Taxation is Theft Vermin. Thank you very much. Of course, everybody knows me as the guy with the big yellow hat, but right now my big yellow hat is being kept away from me in Texas across national borders because of Corona. Thanks. So I just have this little one today, and I just came here to say that I came to cut tax and chew bubble gum, and I'm all out of bubble gum. I'm here to cut taxes. Everything we do is taxed. I'm right now working on this new plan called the New American Dream, which turns this nation of debt. 87% of this country is in debt, and I'm going to put people back in property that they actually own debt-free. That's what's going to happen, and it's awesome. It's an awesome plan because it doesn't require any government subsidies or bailouts or anything else. All it really requires is that the government stop stealing from us. A lot of people talk about we've got the wealthy and the poor. I don't think we have anybody poor in this country. We have victims of robbery who think they're poor, and they're told they're poor by their government. Oh, that's just a condition of your being poor. You're lazy. You don't have the right job. You're not educated, blah, 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 blah. No, you're poor because the government has robbed you of opportunities and money and property and everything else. You're now living as a slave, thanks to government. We're going to end that. And yeah, and it's my birthday, so I'm drinking a beer.
The Corona?
No.
Have a Corona. Disappointing. Happy birthday.
All right, we will go next to Kenneth Blevins.
Problems. And if you trace those problems back to the source, you go back to the Democrat and the Republican Party and their power in Congress and in the presidency. Now, in order to fix those problems, we're going to have to go in there. We're going to have to change a lot of things. Can't do it overnight. It's going to have to be something that we plan out and we dismantle in order to keep everything still running. But we have to dismantle these things, and it's not an overnight thing. But my biggest thing is we need to get term limits in Congress in order to give people better opportunities at better candidates to lead them. With the two-party system, it's not going to happen. There are two boots on the same soldier. It's left or right, the same guy. But if we can get term limits in there, we can help solve these problems. We need transparency in government and the way things are run, where our money's going when they do steal it from us. And we need to just hold our representatives accountable. We can't call them leaders because they don't do that.
Thank you. Hey, Mr. McAfee, if you wouldn't mind muting as you experience COVID-19, that would be great.
My apologies, gentlemen.
We'll get to you shortly. Next up is Judge Jim Gray. Go ahead.
Well, and thank you, and thanks for the opportunity. My background, most of you know me as I was the Libertarian candidate with Governor Gary Johnson. I was the vice presidential nominee. Really an exhilarating thing and also very frustrating because I really felt our message was the right one. We were well qualified and we just didn't get the traction. But we will be able to get our message out. I was libertarian a long time ago, at least in my actions. 1992, as a sitting trial court judge here in California, held a press conference saying our nation's drug policy has failed us. And I got a lot of heat for that, actually put my professional life at risk, but it's true because some things are more important than job security. We still continue to look at these things. By the way, I've written a musical called Convention, the Birth of America, and so I'm really into the founders, not necessarily founding fathers, because there were a lot of founding mothers as well, but one thing that they bickered about, no, they all agreed, each one of the 55 delegates, that the most important function of government is protecting our liberties and our freedoms from the encroachment of government. We are the libertarians. We are the mainstream of American political thought today and political policy. We are responsible. We are live and let live. We are, in fact, don't tread on me. Don't tread on anybody. Get our message out and we will be successful. The country is crying out for open and honest conversation, like libertarians do. This is what Judge Jim Gray and Larry Sharp can do. Go to graysharp2020.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Gray. Next up is Jacob Hornberger.
Yeah, nice to be here with y'all. In 1990, I received a telephone call from a guy named Bill Evers, who was inviting me to serve on the Libertarian Party Platform Committee. And I said no. And he said, why not? And I said, well, because this is a political party. They're going to be watering down principles to get votes. And he says, well, have you ever read the party platform? And I said, no, I don't need to. It's a political party. They're just out to get votes. He says, let me send you the party platform. And I said, send it on. So I started to read it when it arrived, and this is what it said, 1990, in part. We favor the repeal of the fraudulent, virtually bankrupt, and increasingly oppressive Social Security system. We advocate the complete separation of medicine and state. We favor abolition of Medicare and Medicaid programs. That was what the platform was all the way through, a pure libertarian manifesto. I called Bill up and I said, if you'll still have me, it would be an honor to serve in this party, the party of principle. Today, Democrats and Republicans are wreaking death and suffering across the world. They've impoverished and bankrupted Americans here with their socialist and interventionist programs. We libertarians have the ability to lead America out of these crises and that morass. But in order to do so, we have to retain our unique role in this political arena, the party of principle, and running a campaign of principle for the party of principle.
Thank you, Mr. Hornberger. Adam Kokesh.
Thank you so much for putting this together, Dan, and for everybody who's joining us. We've got a very wonderful group of candidates here tonight. We're talking about what our federal policy should be. And if you take an honest look at what it is, what the federal government is, especially as it is laid bare now in this coronaphobia crisis, the federal government of the United States of America has become extremely corrupted, extremely destructive, extremely good at ripping us off, extremely good at Epstein didn't kill himself. I'm sorry. We just heard, didn't we, that Jeffrey Epstein died of coronavirus. I'm sorry, I have to update my stupid debate jokes. But to keep this thing going would be extremely irresponsible. And what we need for the Libertarian Party is a candidate who represents something fundamentally different, a practical, principled, unifying plan. And that's what I'm offering with localization, a peaceful, orderly, responsible bankruptcy process that leaves us with 50 independent states and up to 562 sovereign native nations. And while any of the candidates in the debate tonight would be better than the pussy grabber or the kid sniffer, there are a few of us who are actually offering something fundamentally different. And first of all, John McAfee, I think, has a platform most similar to mine and has the power, and as he has shown with his greater reach, the ability to reach more people. Dan Behrman with Taxation Theft and Arvin Vohra as the partner-in-chief. Let's do something fundamentally different this year.
Thank you, Mr. Kokesh. Next up is Mr. John McAfee.
Hello, gentlemen. John McAfee here. And for those that don't know me, I am on the run from the IRS. I have not paid taxes in 10 years. I refused. Every year I wrote the IRS a letter saying, I'm not paying you guys. I'm not filing. And you know where I live. For 8 years, they left me alone. I've paid over $50 million in taxes, and I have not received $50 million in services. So I stopped. That's probably my most notable thing the past year. We had to lead the country in January. The IRS convened a grand jury. Why? Because 2 years ago, I started speaking on international stages about, you don't want to pay taxes? I'll tell you how. Privacy coins and distributed exchanges. No one will ever know anything about your finances. And that's when it got nasty. I don't have a platform because I don't know, gentlemen, how to fix this thing. I don't think anybody does. And those who say they do, I think, are either lying to themselves or lying to us. We have a two-party system, people, and it's been around for over 3 generations, so it's 4. Never has a government with a two-party system ever grown to a 3-party system. It always shrinks to a 1-party system, and that's where we're headed. There's no place for us at the table. However, there is a place for us on the stage, and that's where we need to be to tell America what's wrong. I'll definitely say what's wrong and how it got wrong, but I don't know how to fix it. I'm sorry, I don't. Adam has a coherent platform. I'm not one of those people. In any case, I'll let this go. I'm finished.
Thank you, Mr. McAfee. Mr. John Monds.
Hi, everyone. I'm John Monds, and I'd like to first of all thank Daniel for putting this debate together, and also introduce myself, give you a little bit of my background. I'm a native of Detroit, Michigan, a married father of 4 who's been living in Georgia now for 20 plus years. My educational background includes a BA degree from Morehouse College with a concentration in banking and finance. I've been a longtime party member, around 15 years, and also a candidate who's run for office 4 times and was one of the first Libertarian candidates to ever get over 1 million votes in a partisan race in the history of the party. I'm very proud of that. I think as a candidate, what we need is someone who will be principled in talking about the issues and also focus on issues where we can win. And that's where we beat the other candidates. For example, my top issue is bringing all the troops home, the drones home, because I think that's an issue that we can win on. And why is that? We have to point out the lie that has gotten us into these foreign engagements, the history. That was quick. And also talking about ending the federal income tax. So I'm looking forward to the format. I miss you guys on the campaign trail, but hopefully we'll have a little fun.
You too, John.
Thank you, Mr. Monds. Moving on to Sam Robb.
Well, hello, folks. My name is Sam Robb, and I'm just some guy from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And if I look a little bit nauseous right now, it's because a stink bug decided to fly through the window and land on me. And that kind of expression is something that you can see across the country right now because people are starting to realize that something stinks. There is something very, very wrong with our government, and this pandemic has really helped to expose that. Now, people for decades really have been looking and saying, we need to change, we need something different. And they thought that it meant, hey, we need to go from team red over here to team blue, or maybe team blue back to team red, and maybe we can balance things out. And the answer is no. As has been pointed out, we end up with the child sniffer or orange man, and people really are getting tired of being told, you need to vote for this despicable, horrible candidate to prevent this other slightly more despicable, slightly more horrible candidate from getting it. They are desperate. They want something to vote for, and that is the Libertarian Party. We are in a unique position right now where we are the adults in the room. And I think that someone like me with a background being from a blue part of a red state, growing up in a Democratic stronghold, going into the Navy, registering Republican, coming to the Libertarian Party years ago, I have a unique opportunity to reach people and to show them that liberty is the answer to their solution, and the Libertarian Party is here for them, not for the party.
Thank you, Mr. Robb. Moving on to Vermin Supreme.
Hello, my name is Vermin Supreme. I am a meme, I am a libertarian, and I am seeking the Libertarian Party nomination. And if you did not know that before, well, by golly, you do now. My name is Vermin Supreme, and I am an internationally recognized, highly respected political satirist, activist, and performer. For over 30 years, I've been using humor and satire as a successful anti-authoritarian communication strategy to mock and delegitimize the duopoly. This has allowed me to reach an audience of tens of millions around the globe and earn free media across the flat earth, across the political spectrum. This little hobby of mine has given me a level of notoriety and fame and reach that allows me to make this legitimate offer of my services as a candidate to the Libertarian Party. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Supreme. Moving on to the not forgotten Arvin Vohra.
My name is Arvin Vohra, and I'm running for president to end the welfare state and the income tax and get government completely out of healthcare. For years, I've argued that we need to end all government involvement in healthcare, and today we're seeing exactly why. We have a shortage of doctors. Why? Because the government does not allow foreign doctors to practice medicine in the United States of America. We're seeing a shortage of equipment. Why? Tariffs, other barriers to trade. We're seeing a shortage of money. Why? Because our money is being wasted on nonsense and idiocy. These shortages can be turned around. They can be turned into prosperity. They can be turned into opportunity. And my goal is to get the government completely out of our lives. Adam pointed out that I hope to be the partner-in-chief, and that's absolutely true. On my first day, I will pardon Julian Assange, Edward Snowden, and Ross Ulbricht, followed by every single nonviolent drug user, trafficker, offender of any kind. When this crisis first hit, people said there are no libertarians in a crisis. But now we see the opposite is true. Idiotic regulations have been lifted, a few of them. Other ones have, of course, been added. People have been turning away from government nonsense to the private sector. Those who once believed that the UN was useful now realize it is only a tool of misinformation that costs us money. Learn more about me at votevohra.com.
Thank you, Mr. Vohra. And last but not least, Mr. Andy Williams Jr.
Hey, I am Andy Hope Williams Jr., running for president as the hood candidate. I come from the streets, been in gangs, drugs, been to prison. I focus on solutions based on what I've experienced and how I've turned my life around. I focus on human rights. That's our first platform, something we're born with. Second is criminal justice reform. I look to have the attorney generals and the Department of Justice actually do their job. And then the third is economic empowerment. Because once we create jobs in the disenfranchised communities, then crime will be reduced. And I just filed a lawsuit on the 13th against Governor Pritzker and Donald Trump for violating our civil liberties and telling Mr. Trump that he swore an oath to defend the Constitution and he's not, to defend and protect the Constitution, he's not doing that. I do have a background in the legal field from experience, not, I do have a bachelor's degree in paralegal studies, but I did draft a lawsuit and I plan on holding people accountable and defending my liberty. I'm the hood candidate, reaching the hip hop generation, the disenfranchised, and the oppressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. All right, we will now move on to the question portion of the debate. And as a reminder, you have 2 seconds to answer.
Since I was mentioned in one, can I respond? 30 seconds.
Who were you mentioned in?
John McAfee and Arvin Vohra both mentioned me. Just a quick.
Sure, go ahead.
No. Yeah, well, for what John said was that he doesn't really have a platform, and I apologize for applying that label when he doesn't see it that way. I'm kind of reading that into what he's talking about in terms of principles. And the point that I was making was that him and Arvin and Dan and myself are really the only candidates who have a practical, non-aggression principle compliant platform. Maybe Vermin as well.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. We will now move on to the question portion of the debate. And again, you have 60 seconds to respond to each question. As we all well know, potentially the largest pushback against libertarian ideals is on how to safely and effectively replace and remove common social services that are already in place, such as public schooling, police and fire departments, subsidizing of food and housing, the adoption and foster care systems, and of course, everyone's favorite, roads. Now, as president, what would be your personal ideal approach to these common public services, starting with Mr. John McAfee?
Sorry, I was trying to unmute myself. Could you please repeat the question?
Social services. How do you deal with them? What is your approach to such things like public schooling and the road situation?
Well, the way I would like to see things, or how do we get to a sane social system? I believe that people are responsible for themselves after the age of 18. I was. I didn't have an easy life. Adam, you've been in prison. I've been in prison multiple times in multiple countries. My background is as shady as they come in terms of criminal activities. I've never done anything other than smoke weed and take drugs on the dark side of the law. But that seemed to be enough to get me arrested. I don't believe that anyone is responsible for another person after you reach the age of adulthood. Doesn't mean you can't help them. I mean, if a neighbor comes to me, then I'll help. And thanks.
Thank you. Moving on to Mr. Monds.
Yeah, I think the best way we can address social services is to point out, for example, with Social Security, that it is a Ponzi scheme. You tell the truth. And the fact that it has a horrible return, and that people would be better off doing things themselves, and that they are ultimately responsible for their own lives. They should not look to government. Government is not our friend, and just about everything that I know of that government's involved in is horrible. They ruin everything. So I lead by example. I'm a homeschool parent. I've been doing that for over 20 years, and my two of my oldest kids have already graduated from college. But that's the type of thing that we impress to the American public, is that these services that you think are worthy from government are in fact ruining society. They're bankrupting the country. They're bankrupting our families. So we need to stop doing these things and be responsible for ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to Sam Robb.
Okay. If you look at successful people, if you look at wealthy people, when they want to give something back to their community, when they want to give something back, when they want to help people, they immediately rush to the government and say, here, take all my money. No. They set up a private institution. They give money to private individuals and to private organizations because they know that's where it works. If we want to replace the current welfare system, if we want to replace the current social system, we need to get people, encourage people to do exactly that, to put their money where it needs to go. And in order to do that, and I know I'm going to get a nod from at least a couple of the candidates here, we need to stop taking their money. We need to allow them to keep what they earn. We need to allow them to invest that in their local communities, and we need to allow them to stop putting the government in the middle and taking, for bureaucratic and administrative purposes, money that could be going towards helping people.
Thank you. Moving on to Vermin Supreme.
Yes, of course, once again, Rob's right. I mean, if we do the tax abolition thing, then of course people are keeping a much bigger chunk of their check. And of course, once we enact the LP platform, which would be to end the overseas military and end corporate welfare and subsidies, that would make a major cut down. Of course, as an anarchist, I've always believed that the only way we'll be able to disengage from the system is ultimately by creating parallel systems and structures that negate the need for the government, and so therefore we can disengage. And those certainly involve mutual aid, volunteerism, and certainly charity. And these things can be built up, stronger families, stronger neighbors, always equal less government. And in a fail-safe position, I always drop back to I am happy to play the minarchist advocate and say, well, maybe we need just that much government for that.
Thank you, Mr. Supreme. And technically, Mr. Robb, you were mentioned in that. Would you like to rebut his speech in favor of you?
No, actually, I think Vermin is absolutely correct there. We need to replace systems in parallel, allow people to shift over from a dependence on government to a dependence on each other. And actually, if you look at the current situation, that's exactly what you're seeing. Communities coming together. When I talk to people about what's going on and where they're happy, at their local level, they're generally very happy. At their state level, it depends on where they're at. But at the government level, at the federal government level, they have problems. They want to see people in their communities watching out for people in their communities.
Thank you, Mr. Robb. Mr. Supreme. Next up is Mr. Arvin Vohra.
For a long time, I've advocated abolishing government schools. I oppose the entire welfare state, including welfare for the middle class. I believe that if you have a child, it is your responsibility to provide food, clothing, and education for your own child, and no one should be forced to pay for anybody else's kid. Now, to Vermin's point, I've recently done exactly what he suggested, which is take that upon myself to help people do that. I've put my considerable experience in education and I've made it available for free to anybody who wants it. It's something new called the AP Homeschool Project. The website is aphomeschool.com. The idea here is really simple. I want to make sure that if you do the morally right thing of taking care of your own kids, it's also going to be the educationally advantaged thing that will give them every possible opportunity. Vermin's right. We need to do this by helping each other, not by letting the state rob our neighbors.
Thank you, Mr. Vohra. Mr. Andy Williams, Jr.
Okay. So with social services, I look back in history and see what the Black Panther Party had did in the community. I like the model of the ACLU and NAACP with volunteerism as long as it's community-based, because I think some of the organizations allow volunteerism and they just taking advantage of people. But I think when we give it back to the community as it was in the 20s, 30s with Black Wall Street, specifically empowering the disenfranchised and say, hey, we educate, our own, each one, teach one, and we share the knowledge and the wealth so nobody will go without. So that's what I look for social services. The people have become so dependent on government, they're afraid to do something on their own without the system.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Moving on to Mr. Dan Taxation is theft. Behrman.
Thank you. So I have a 3-part plan. Part 1, stop lying. The government tells us this is the only way you can have these things if we steal from people and give it to you. That's the only way. Stop lying. Step 1. Step 2, stop racketeering. It is illegal to compete with the government. It is illegal to deliver mail. UPS, FedEx, all those guys, it's illegal for them to deliver mail. They only have specialized services. Why? Because the government says no. There's no competition. There's no free choice. They have stolen our choice from us. Step 3, stop stealing. How do they fund all these programs that we hate? With stolen money. And how can people not afford to get these programs on their own? They have nothing left because the government's taken everything from them. The biggest objection I hear to homeschooling, which is educating your children on your own, is that we don't have any time because we're working so hard. Why are we working so hard? Did you know if the government stopped stealing half of your paycheck, that you would only need one parent to work?
All right. Thank you, Mr. Behrman. Moving on to Mr. Kenneth Blevins.
The answer is actually written out in the Constitution. And the 10th Amendment says, the power is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited to it by the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people. What we need is localization and voluntary action. We need to get those programs away from the federal government and move them into more local and area-driven organizations, so we can actually help the people and get that middleman out of there.
Thank you, Mr. Blevins. Moving on to Mr. Judge Jim Gray. Go ahead.
You have forgotten Ken Armstrong too, but let me speak for him. But I say frequently as a judge that I would have the opportunity to swear people into various offices, bar, whatever, and I swear to protect and defend the Constitution. Then I have them keep their hand up and swear you'll read it, because most people really have not, including a lot of judges that I've read. You talk about the 10th Amendment. I haven't seen that in written form in a judicial opinion in a very long time. Wrong. Article 1, Section 8, we go back to it. 10th Amendment, we go back to it. And I quote Henry Ford quite a bit. Not my favorite person socially, because he was probably anti-Semitic, but he said something everyone should understand, which is anyone that feels they can thrive by relying on the government should talk to the American Indian. It's really all you have to say. And that has been a disaster for the Native Americans forever. So we get into competition. Competition works. Our cell phones, they work. That's what we get to. We're libertarians. We lead the charge.
Thank you, Judge Gray. Mr. Jacob Hornberger.
I would love to have the American people in this campaign season asking a very important question. What is the role of government in a free society? And there is no question that this government schooling system plays no role in a free society. It is antithetical to principles of freedom, not just because of the political stealing, as has been pointed out, but also because of what it does to kids, to their minds, this indoctrination and this propaganda, destroying the love of learning. There's only one solution to this from a libertarian perspective: separating school and state the way our ancestors separated church and state. Roads, privatize them. Private ownership produces the best of everything. Eliminate all the unjust criminal justice things that the state is doing, the drug war, vice. Limit the cops to protecting us from murderers and rapists and thieves and the like. Then all of a sudden, you're talking about limited government that is actually doing something positive for freedom in the citizenry.
Thank you, Mr. Hornberger. Mr. Adam Kokesh.
Just a quick reminder for people to mute their microphones when they're not speaking so we don't interrupt the other individuals.
Yes, please.
Season day.
I want to make sure everybody gets the same amount of time and their fair shake. Mr. Adam Kokesh, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Dan. So the question was about infrastructure and legitimate social services provided by government that I think all of us as libertarians, I describe myself as a voluntarist because that's the core of the ethics behind libertarianism: self-ownership, the non-aggression principle, live and let live. And I love that Kenny Blevins, came out and said voluntarism, localization, because that's really what it's all about and how we transition away from this. When it comes to the roads, I think I'm the only candidate who's actually built a road. That's right. I didn't have a road connecting to my property when I bought it. I built a road. My road is named my road, in case you were wondering. And this idea of localization in terms of how do we transition out of this dependency, it's the everybody gets what they want strategy, as opposed to saying we're going to be some kind of central planner. I'm going to abolish this and abolish that. We need an easy to understand unifying message. That's what localization is.
Thank you, Mr. Kokesh. Mr. Blevins, you were mentioned in that last response. Would you like to respond to that?
Yes, voluntary action. I know some of these candidates aren't really big on the Constitution, but it's also mentioned in the Articles of Confederation. Article 2 also states that each state retains its sovereignty and freedom and independence and power, jurisdiction, and right. So, that's also something that goes back to voluntarism and localism.
Thank you, Mr. Blevins and Mr. Kokesh. And finally, Mr. Ken Armstrong.
Thank you. So simple answer is the federal government needs to get out of local issues, period, end of statement. But, I've been the CEO of Hawaii Habitat for Humanity. I've seen the very best of volunteerism in communities. I've seen how people can come together and solve their problems together at the local level. I believe families, houses of worship, communities can make those decisions. I lived in rural Oregon where they don't provide government-provided fire service. You buy your fire service like you buy insurance. That's what that community chooses to do, and it works. They have the right to choose those things at the local level.
Thank you, Mr. Armstrong, and thank you, candidates. Moving on. Keeping in line with that note, obviously we are in a very unprecedented time with the COVID-19 pandemic and quarantine. As president, what would be your approach to a viral outbreak such as this, and in what ways would you handle this situation differently than Mr. Trump, President Trump, has so far? Starting with Mr. Dan Behrman.
I think the first thing we should do whenever there's a viral outbreak is get the government out of the way. They've been in the way, preventing us from getting masks, tests, everything else. They shut down the entire economy, which has, by a lot of people's recollection or science, has said that this is actually absolutely nonsense. They shut down smoking stores, and they found out that smoking actually helps kill the virus. Who knew? Government can't centrally plan anything. Stop trying to central plan a reaction to a virus. Allow the market to do its thing. Allow people to help their neighbors and do their thing, and just get government can I swear on this? Out of the way. The fuck out of the way. There we go.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Behrman. Moving on to Mr. Ken Blevins.
That's part of it. Is just get the government out of the way. Let the market, produce items that's going to help. Let them produce productive items, and don't hold out information. Inform the public of what's coming. Let them know. Let them be prepared. Don't do it where they have to go out there and get everything right now and hoard stuff. But just say, hey, we have this coming. This is what's going to happen. This is what we believe is going to happen, and just inform them. Don't use scare tactics. Use information. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blevins. Judge Jim Gray.
The politicians responded to this epidemic logically, politically. So if I'm a politician and I'm a mayor or I'm a governor, what do? I show people I'm going to do everything I can to keep you healthy. So if you don't get sick, I'm a hero because it worked. And if you do get sick, I have plausible deniability because I did everything I could. We needed libertarian courage. We needed someone to stand up and say, yes, we need to be safe. We'll allow adults to make adult decisions, but we'll also consider the economy, not a part of the discussion. And how much harm is caused by people, tens of millions of people losing their jobs? Not a part of that political discussion. Putting hundreds of thousands of businesses out of business. And if I'm a hardware store owner, for example, I'm closed down. I'm not essential according to the arbitrary government. But the box stores stay open so people can buy their hardware there. It's wrong. We need to bring people instead of governments to resolve these issues.
Thank you, Judge Gray. Mr. Jacob Hornberger.
We have a tremendous opportunity in this crisis. There's nothing like the prospect of death that focuses people's attention because it's so real. And I think what we need to do is talk to the American people about an entirely different system, the only system that can extricate us from this crisis. And that system is what I mentioned earlier in the platform from 30 years ago. A total separation of healthcare and the state, a total free market healthcare system. When you combine that with a sound economic system, our founding economic system, where you keep everything you earn, where charity is 100% voluntary, where we trust people to keep everything they earned and to make the right decisions. And then a third system of sound money, no Federal Reserve, none of this paper money, none of this debasement of the currency. When we put together those three systems, we're now building the foundation for the future, and we're showing people how to extricate ourselves from this crisis, because it's the only way to extricate ourselves from this crisis.
Thank you. Mr. Adam Kokesh.
I'm glad that I get to just say ditto to most of what's been said before about getting government out of the way and pointing out all of the horrific ways that government has made this worse. And I think the best silver lining that we can see in this opportunity that we have right now is that nearly every single American is now a civil disobedience activist. In some way, we have all disobeyed the lockdown orders. We see people getting arrested surfing, wakeboard or paddleboarding, playing with their kids in a park. And this is absolutely insane. We see the American people standing up. I read a great article today on my show on Adam versus the Man from the Ron Paul Institute, and it was about how this feels like 1989. The Berlin Wall coming down, Tiananmen Square, and there's a feeling today that people are realizing the chains aren't real.
Mr. Kokesh. Now to Mr. Ken Armstrong.
Okay, well, thank you. So as a federal disaster contingency planner myself, recommended for Federal Executive of the Year for my work in the Port of Los Angeles, Long Beach, I've actually held the federal plans all the way up to the level of top secret in my hands. I know what the federal plans are. So one thing I can say is, I don't think this president has read them. The three most important things in a federal response to anything, and there is a proper role for federal government. The three most important things is make sure the public knows everything you know. Make sure that all the levels of government agency response are coordinated so they can talk to each other and communicate with each other. And make sure that there can be a free flow of logistics, goods, and services to the places that are affected. F, F, and F for this president.
Thank you, Mr. Armstrong. Mr. John Monds.
Yeah, I think what the current crisis points out is that freedom actually works. We have to look at what is going right in this pandemic, and that is government actually getting out of or relaxing rules on licensing of doctors. Letting retired doctors come back and practice without taking various tests, or the fact that they talk about the limit of beds, and we need to mention the fact that. In most communities, in order to get a hospital, you have to, file paperwork to have your competitors say that there's a need in the community, instead of just letting whoever wants to go into business, and if they fail, they fail. And also, we should point out the fact that the policies of the other parties are based on what they believe is that the American people are too stupid to make their own choices. So just because you open up the economy, that doesn't mean people are going to go to stores and go out and do things. They are able to make decisions and judge what risk they're willing to take. And I think that's a good policy to have.
Thank you. Mr. Sam Robb.
How would I react to this as president? Well, first off, if I was president, I would have been president for the last 3 years, which means that myself and these fine gentlemen here, who I would be relying on to help me deal with dismantling the federal government, would have already addressed things like getting rid of the FDA, getting rid of the various laws that are being impeding our reaction to this, freeing up the market and allowing it to deal with this crisis, deal with this pandemic, deal with this disease in a way that makes sense. If you think about it, we're looking to the government and saying, hey, what is going to happen from top down? How are we going to coordinate all this? That's not how our bodies work. Our bodies get on with the business of life, while what's needed to fight a disease is marshaled and goes and takes place and deals with it. That's what happens in the free market. Those individuals who can deal with the situation do, and the rest of life goes on so that you don't drop over dead. That's really what we need.
Thank you, Mr. Robb. Mr. Vermin Supreme.
Okay, sorry about that. This is, of course, a very transformational moment. It's people are working from home. They're taking school at home. It's definitely changing a lot of fundamental assumptions about things that are necessary in society. All the regulations that to be tossed aside is unnecessary in this time. And so I think it's a serious opportunity for libertarians to be able to reach out to all these people's questioning. I mean, for a situation, or if they haven't been able to enact that, and the government is best equipped for sheer enforcement. Now, what would I do? I would outlaw COVID-19. I would set up COVID-19 free zones. I would go back in time. I would kill baby COVID. I would build a microscopic, antiviral, antibacterial wall around this great nation of ours, and then outside of the wall, I will build a moat and fill it with Purell. Thank you. I'm Vermin Supreme.
Thank you, Mr. Supreme. Mr. Arvin Vohra.
Imagine today if let's say there was no coronavirus outbreak and everybody decided they wanted to go out to a restaurant. You know what you would see? You'd see about a 2-hour wait. Today, before Corona, when there was nothing going on, if you go to a hospital, the best you see is a 2-hour break. Wait, because of the government-created delays. If I'd been president, we would have had doctors from all over the world practicing medicine in America. We'd have people able to re-import medicines from any country they wanted to. There would be no shortage. If somebody wanted to start a hospital or a clinic, they'd be able to. And so we would have a much larger supply. We wouldn't have tariffs on the medical items we need from other countries. And so we would have everything we needed to do. The government has no place in it. The government can only get in the way, as they have done with the FDA. So if I'm elected, I'm going to get the government completely out of medicine and the FDA and let the free market give us better health care.
Thank you, Mr. Vohra. Mr. Andy Williams, Jr.
For one, I would be very transparent about what was going on, have one voice, the central voice speaking truth to the people, giving the people the choice, not saying this is the way it is, because I think we do have choices. I would have already set up healthcare clinics in the community that were ran by the community, like Harris Rosen does in Florida with his Rosen Care, and similar to the Black Panther Party healthcare clinic. I would encourage healthy eating, especially those that have weak immune systems, based on the information that we're hearing, saying, hey, you need to drink alkaline water, get off those sugars. You know, if you have these pre-existing conditions under the respiratory, diabetes, like these are the ones that we got to be careful of. And I would put an extra emphasis on the widows and the elderly, you know, the most vulnerable people, and make sure that the resources were there, and limited government by aiding and assisting those who didn't have it.
Very much. And finally, Mr. John McAfee.
Well, if I'd been president, the first thing I would have done is try to find the truth of the situation. Is this, in fact, a pandemic worthy of doing anything about? If we look at numbers, if we don't listen to the press goes horrific, devastating numbers. Really? In the entire world, ladies and gentlemen, in the past, since it began in December, 5 months, less than 250,000 people worldwide have died. In the same period of time, 630,000 people have died from the flu. Now, why do politicians follow the mainstream media? Because if you Donald Trump on the first day said, listen, I don't think this is so bad. On the second day, panic, because the mainstream media feeding off of the fear of the public forces our politicians to stand in line. Why? You're not going to get elected next year if something bad really happens. You know, look at the numbers. That's the first thing I would do. I'm sorry to the overtime.
Thank you, Mr. McAfee. Now, the final question before our break. One topic that seems to some extent to divide the Libertarian Party, and because of this seems to often be avoided in Libertarian debates, is the topic of abortion. It is a justifiably touchy subject, but it is in many cases the primary issue for many single-issue voters. If you were the Libertarian nominee for president, what would be your stance on abortion, and what would be your rationale to voters who disagree with your position? Starting with Mr. John Monds. Did we lose Mr. Monds? Appears we did. Bad timing, Mr. Monds. Starting with Mr. Sam Robb.
Now, isn't this ironic? I am a pro-life candidate. I absolutely am. I said in Iowa, if you actually take out of the Libertarian platform and read through it, you will come to the conclusion that the Libertarian Party is one that values and protects life. And I absolutely believe that's true. I think the Libertarian Party is the only party that really looks at this issue with a critical eye. That's one of the reasons why I feel comfortable here. That's one of the reasons why I am comfortable talking to those that even disagree with me, because we are trying to find common ground. We're trying to find common solutions. We're trying to work through difficult problems. I believe that life begins at conception, that that abortion is the taking of life, and absent very rare circumstances, abortion is not something that should be considered. Taking of human life is murder. That's it. Now, there are some situations where you have to make a choice between a mother's life and a child's life. That's up to the mother. There are some situations where a mother has not been given the choice in whether or not she is a mother. That, in those cases, she needs to be able to make a choice as well. Absent that, most adults find themselves in the situation of being a father, being a mother, because of a choice that they made and a responsibility that they need to accept. It is our job as a society to support them and to encourage them and to help them do what they can do to take care of their child, to ensure that that child gets placed into a home where they will be loved, where they will be cared for, and where they will be able to grow and blossom and become a functioning adult. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Dan, I'm hearing a beeping. Am I the only one hearing that?
Yeah, somebody's beeping. Who's beeping? I don't know. These are the times that we live in.
It sounds like a dot matrix printer, actually.
It does.
Yeah, it does.
It doesn't sound like your bell.
If everybody could please just mute until it is your time to speak, that would help. Thank you very much. John Monds, did you hear the question? We lost you and you are now back. Did you hear the question, or would you like me to repeat it?
No, I didn't. I missed it.
Okay.
I am back.
It is on the topic of abortion. It is one that divides the Libertarian Party and is a touchy topic, but one that a lot of people see as a single issue vote for single issue voters. If you were the nominee, what would be your stance on abortion, and what would be your rationale to voters who agree with you?
Uh-oh. Hello? Okay, I got it. Personally, I am against abortion, but I do not think that government should be the entity that makes that decision for anyone. So, man, what's going on here?
It's your time.
Yeah, I don't think government should make that decision for any woman. So that's my stance. You have the personal side, and what's should government be involved in abortion or making that decision for people? I say no.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Monds. Mr. Vermin Supreme. You are muted, Mr. Supreme.
Yes, abortion is, of course, a very contentious and polarizing issue. I personally support a woman's right to choose, but of course, I ultimately guided by the abortion plank of the Libertarian Party platform, which reads, recognizing that abortion is a sensitive issue and that people can hold good faith views on all sides, we believe the government should be kept out of the matter, leaving the question to each person for their conscientious consideration. And I believe that's a very, very sensible statement. It's a very sensible platform because it allows people on all sides of that particular issue to agree that the government should not be involved in that business. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Arvin Vohra.
I don't think there are really two sides to the abortion debate. I don't think anybody is pro-abortion. I think everyone would agree that all things being equal, we would prefer there to be fewer abortions, that in any individual case, we don't want an abortion. Abortion's a negative thing. And so the question becomes really, how do we handle it? And that's where libertarianism shines. It shines in its pragmatism. Why are there so many abortions? Well, one reason is that private adoptions are unnecessarily regulated and pointlessly expensive. What's another reason? Young men, young women often can't get jobs because of minimum wage laws and laws that actually prevent people below a certain age of getting a job at all. So even if they're ready to start a family emotionally, they would be financially, legally blocked from providing for their children. So there are a lot of things that fueled abortions that are government created. I don't believe abortion's right. I believe it's always wrong. And I believe that that's something that it needs to be discussed through church, through morality, and through culture, not forced by government.
Thank you. Mr. Andy Williams, Jr.
I agree 100% with the Libertarian platform principles. I also believe in education. When it comes to starting a family, the high schools show what it would be like if a child had a baby. I believe in teaching safe sex and prevention, because I think we've gotten away from talking about, STDs and the different things, kind of like the scare tactic. But I'm 100% against the government telling a person what they should do and should not do with their life and their choice. But I also believe we need to give education and explain and, just hold people accountable.
Thank you. Mr. John McAfee.
Yeah, well, for me, the entire issue hinges on the question, is a fetus a conscious entity or not? Because if not, then it is not a human being. It is a potential human being. And I just don't know the answer to that. And not knowing the answer, what right do I have to even talk about the subject with people? Therefore, if you want to have an abortion, please do so. There's no right or wrong to it in my mind, because until we get that answer, you can't judge the rightness or wrongness of that act. I will say this: I have 47 children, and in my life there have been 17 women who took abortions. But anyway, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kenneth Blevins.
When it comes to abortion, I believe that Sam, John, Arvin, and Andy all touched on what I feel about it. If you look at some of the studies and some of the statistics, very few abortions are actually non-preventable by prophylactic or precautionary measures. And whenever it comes to choice, it should be made, I believe, before conception and not after. If that choice is taken away afterwards, or even before, if that choice is taken away, then that's where it falls. But I don't agree with it, but it's definitely not the government's responsibility to regulate it. But like I said, prevention is worth, they say an ounce of prevention's worth more than a pound of cure. So let's try to prevent all these through education, through prophylactic measures, and get rid of the problem that way, not having the government regulate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Judge Gray?
Yes, well, Dan, this is obviously a very difficult and emotional area, and I wish I were smart sometimes, but I believe that it comes down to, in fact, it's so emotional. I became a granddaddy 2 days ago, so it's even more emotional for me, and it's just an exciting thing. But it comes down to, in my view, a definitional problem. If you define that life begins at conception, then if you're going to have an abortion, it's murder. It's murder of a human being. And I think that that is not a federal issue, but it is a state issue. If you do not, and I happen not to, I think it's later, certainly not within the first trimester, maybe sometime in the second trimester, I don't know. But until that time, until it becomes viable, then I believe this is a decision for the mother. And that's simply a matter of her being able to control her own body. But one way or the other, I think all of the other comments are appropriate. Certainly Arvin's was with regard to the government involved in this stuff too, for the being able to support your family. It's tough, but that's where I come down. And I don't think that it's a federal issue.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. Arvin, you were mentioning that last. Would you like to respond?
I would. There is an additional part of this, which is that because we have made it so difficult for people to provide for families, people have become more reticent to start families. And we see that not just among people who are very young, but also people in their 20s, 30s, etc. And I think that that's something that is being created by government, and we need to stop it. And if we want to stop a lot of these unnecessary side effects, it's really about getting government out of it.
Thank you. Mr. Jacob Hornberger.
I believe that life begins at conception. I'm a Catholic, and Catholicism is a central part of my life. And But having said that, I don't put a lot of faith in the criminal justice system to resolve this problem. I think it should be at the state level. But I mean, even when they prosecute for an abortion, the abortion's already been committed. They haven't saved the life of the person. I do believe the state, though, has a role in protecting human life, and I believe it begins at conception. I also believe in private counseling groups. That's where I put my faith. In the Catholic Church, they have something called Project Gabriel that counsels young women, pregnant women, on going to term and giving them advice and counseling. I think that's where we should put our efforts, trying to raise the conscious and the consciousness of people to go to term with the baby and maybe put him up for adoption or whatever. Don't go through the process of seeking adoption.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Hornberger. Again, if you are not speaking, please mute your mic, or I will do it for you. That is the joy of digital debates. Moving on to Mr. Adam Kokesh.
All right. 15 minutes of libertarians talking about abortion. Is that enough for everybody? I think that's more than enough. My position is very clear. As president, I promise I will never have an abortion. That being said, we have to respect that this decision that a woman faces. You know, we have a panel of men here who should have nothing to say about this. That a woman has a right to decide if her life is being threatened, and she has the right to make that decision in private, and government should have nothing to do with it whatsoever. So just to pivot to a better topic, back to coronavirus, Ron Paul wrote a column called The Coronavirus Hoax about March 1st. A month before that, February 1st, I called that in a podcast. And it's not that the coronavirus itself is a hoax, but the fear crisis, the coronaphobia crisis around it absolutely is. I've been fighting since the beginning, protesting, and I want to ask the other candidates if any of them have been standing up as well.
Well, technically, you're all called out, but we don't really have time for that. Nobody was called out by name, so we'll move on. Mr. Con Armstrong.
I've long been against abortion. I would really like to know that it wasn't necessary. Dawn and I met a young woman down in Louisiana who was going to have an abortion, and the people in her community found out that she was going to do this, and they promised to help her and support her, and they did that, and she didn't need to have the abortion. I believe that that's a local issue. But if we outlaw abortion at the state or federal level, the only thing that will happen is wealthy women will go someplace where they can have the abortion legally, and poor women will go to underground abortion clinics where they'll get infections and die and have horrible medical problems like used to happen when abortion was illegal before. Prohibition doesn't work. Abortion or otherwise, even if we hate it, prohibition doesn't work.
Thank you. Mr. Dan Behrman.
So I think this entire discussion is completely misunderstood by everybody. You have one group who wants to protect life and another group who wants to protect freedom. And the question is, where do we draw the line? So I'm going to read you an excerpt from a wonderful book called The Dictionary. Sunset, the setting or descent of the sun below the horizon in the evening, the atmospheric and scenic phenomena accompanying this. Okay, so is the sunset when the sun touches the horizon? Is it when it's like halfway behind? Is it when the entire thing is below? Or like, what about that little glow right outside of the sun? Is it when that's below? Or is it when the sky actually gets dark and there's no more notice of any of the sun around? Where do we draw the line? That's what this question is when you're arguing about when does life begin and all these other things. It's an interesting discussion. It's a philosophical discussion that we can have, but should the government get involved? Probably not, because then we're saying, well, I don't agree with you, so I'm going to go find some men with guns and make sure that they enforce my opinion on you.
Thank you, Mr. Behrman. All right, that concludes the first half of our debate. We will now take a brief 10-minute recess and reconvene in 10 minutes. If you are watching the live stream, stick around. Candidates, please stay on the line. Everybody, go grab a drink, take a leak, do what you got to do, and we'll be back in 10 minutes.
Hey guys, this is Dan's wife, Kayla. I just wanted to interrupt this podcast to let you know that he puts a lot of work into it for currently no monetary profit. And he has a family to feed. To do so, he runs his own media business called Goulash Media. Dan has a crazy creative brain that makes him uniquely able to take your project, whatever it may be, and make it the full package. So whether you're in need of graphic design, logos, branding, commercials, wedding videos, podcast jingles, music production, music videos, merchandise, websites, pictures, or what have you, contact Dan and he'll seriously make you look and sound awesome. For more information, just go to goulashmedia.net. That's goulash, Goulash, media.net, where Dan caters to the little guy with the big vision.
Welcome back. We have all of our candidates back, and we will now continue. Candidates, this is the next question. We are moving right along. We are well on schedule, which is great. Thank you for keeping your responses within time for the most part. Candidates, it should go without saying that a presidential election where our only two options are Donald Trump and Joe Biden is a disgrace to our nation's election process. As the Libertarian nominee, what would be your strategy in the general election to getting on the debate stage and giving the Libertarian Party the attention it deserves? We will start this time with Mr. Kenneth Blevins.
Oh, how do we get on the debate stage? That's a great question. Because honestly, I think the two-party system's scared of us. Because if they see that we actually have a platform to stand on that's a lot better than the rhetoric they've been running for the last century and a half, then they don't want anything to do with us. I think anybody on this live stream here could give both Trump and Biden a run for their money and point out a lot of the ways the government has failed and how we need to move away from the two-party system and what it's led us to. But it just comes down to informing people, educate them that they do have another choice, a better choice, and that we are that better choice. And just trying to get everybody to see that the lie that, you're wasting your vote on third party is just that, a lie. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blevins. And I will throw out a reminder for the people who have just tuned in. I know that we had a lot of comments in the comment section saying that people are going over time, yada, yada, as people do in comment sections. The rules are everybody has 60 seconds to respond. The bell will ring at 10 seconds till the end of their time, and that time will be deducted from their closing statement. So we're trying to keep it as fair as possible. Stop blowing up my stuff. Next is Mr. Judge Jim Gray on the topic of the debate stage and the general election. Mr. Gray?
Yes. And Dan, and congratulations, you are keeping us on schedule here in today's world.
Yes.
We brought in 2012, Jerry Johnson and I in our campaign brought a lawsuit in federal court saying that we should go back to the old League of Women Voters criterion. Any political party that's on enough ballots in enough states, technically to win the presidency, should have their voice heard. And it's not easy to be on the ballot in any state. We also carried the torch for the Green Party because they were on the ballots in 40 states. We couldn't make it. The answer is money. That we have all of these sponsors that's delivering lots of money, and so they want to make that money. So if you have a third-party candidate, Gray or any of these people there, Trump will probably decline to go. And if Trump won't go, then probably the sponsors will drop off too. So we have to get the word to the people. It's un-American. I've had prominent Democrats, prominent Republicans saying it's not American. We need the third voice, and particularly now.
Thank you. Mr. Jacob Hornberger.
I see this so-called two-party system as a one-party system. Democrats and Republicans stand for the same thing. Foreign wars that are killing and wreaking death and destruction with bombs and sanctions. They're bankrupting the American people. We can see that even in this crisis, that people don't even have savings anymore because this massive welfare warfare state and the income tax that funds it. I'm proposing something different for this party, that we run a bold campaign, a campaign that's based totally on libertarian principles. For example, New York Magazine just attacked me today because they said that I have an untimely proposal to end the Federal Reserve. I've stood for this for 40 years. But notice that when you take these bold positions, that attracts attention. And then people can say, hey, this guy wants to end the Federal Reserve. Why? And so I think that our principles are everything. I believe they're our greatest asset. And that if we go into battle against these people with our principles, we have a good chance of doing very well.
Thank you. Mr. Adam Kokesh.
Dan, I'm so glad you asked. I think I'm the only candidate with an actual plan to get us in the debates. And this is a combination of things that I've done in the past, organizing Veterans for Ron Paul when we marched in formation on the White House, what we saw with Ralph Nader and Jill Stein getting arrested, going up to be in the debates that they were excluded from, and what Truckers for Freedom have done, shutting down DC in the past, and what we see all over the country now with vehicle protests in the age of coronaphobia. So we are going to march on the debates with veterans. And see, this is great because even though this is an answer that I have as part of this plan with veterans who are libertarian to come out and demand that the libertarian be allowed to debate, I'm going to do this for whoever the nominee is. Anybody who's in the debate tonight would be, I'd be honored to organize this for. We are going to go and block the entrances and shut down the debates and say that as a formation of veterans, you're going to have to arrest us one at a time. And if you don't let the libertarian debate, the Republican and Democrat will not be allowed to debate either.
Thank you, Mr. Kokesh. Mr. Ken Armstrong.
Well, I actually agree that it's not very likely that we'll see fair and open debates this year. I think that the incumbent is going to do his very best to make sure that that doesn't happen. But regardless of what happens, I'm going to make a pledge to all of you. We got about a dozen candidates here and a few more that aren't with us today. I'm going to make a pledge to all of you. Whoever gets the nomination, I certainly would love it to be me, but whoever gets the nomination, we're going to put 100% of our effort into raising all kinds of hell on the public stage to make sure that our nominee gets the attention that they deserve to get. I hope you'll back me if I'm the nominee, and whoever of you gets the nomination, you have my 100% commitment that we will not back down until we see you on the stage.
So say we all.
Amen. Mr. Dan, Taxation is Theft, Behrman.
Fuck the debates. I mean, really, you think they're going to let us on their stage? I like Adam's plan, and hey, if I get the nomination, I will ask Adam to run that rally for me while I'm inside, covertly dressed as just a normal convention goer, to run on the stage with my big yellow hat and say, hey, there's a third party running. Maybe I'll do something like that. Who knows? But here's the thing. We can't expect like, oh, yeah, no. If we do enough, they're going to pay attention to us and they're going to want us in their debates. No, that's not how it works. That's why we don't have any coverage up until this point. You have to create your own channel for attention for people to see this. We have to create this. That's the only way people are going to pay attention to this, because right now they're stuck on mainstream media. It's unfortunate. That's the way things are. We can't wave a magic wand and have stupid expectations that like, oh yeah, well, if we just do something that they're gonna say, hey, yeah, well, why don't you guys come up on stage with us? That's not gonna happen. There's a two-party system for a very good reason. They have a lot of power backed by a shit ton of money, and they don't want to share it with anybody else.
Thank you. Mr. Sam Robb.
Okay. When I was growing up back in the days of the Soviet Union, you had a government that had complete control over the populace, and yet the ideas of freedom spread. There was something called samizdat, where they would actually take papers talking about freedom and talking about liberty, and they would mimeograph them. I don't know how many of you guys are old enough to remember what the smell of mimeograph paper is like, but I see Jacob smiling right there. But they didn't understand how technology was going to undermine their authority. And what we see in these two major parties right now, especially right now, the entire United States is online because that's where you have to be. They're still thinking in the mode of, hey, let's get on the broadcast news. Hey, let's broadcast these debates. We have a pipeline straight into people's houses, straight into reaching people's hearts and minds. If we can exploit this, if we can take this and magnify it, we can be a voice that they cannot stop. And we can render their debates null and void because people will be paying attention to us instead of listening to them.
Thank you, Mr. Robb. Mr. Vermin Supreme.
Definitely, lawsuits would definitely be a part of the. I've certainly been to many street protests outside of the debates over the years, which have always been a very exciting thing with the riot police and people getting arrested and all that good stuff. But if I am the nominee, I certainly pledge that I will, in fact, get arrested attempting to enter any of those debates, because I believe publicity arrests are certainly a very good thing. But when it comes to straight up qualifying for the debate, which would mean polling at 15%, I believe that is precisely where the Vermin Supreme viral meme campaign strategy comes in. Essentially, at that point in the campaign, I don't see how it would be possible for a Vermin Supreme candidate to not poll at 15%, given the current circumstances. I just don't see it not happening.
Thank you, Mr. Supreme. Mr. Arvin Vohra is next.
I'd like to address my response to anybody from the Libertarian National Committee who might be watching right now. For the last 2 years, we have had debates online, in state parties, the free and equal debate that was open to everyone. And here's the help we got from the LNC: none. A refusal to post any of it on lp.org or the LP Facebook page. Listen, I've been on the inside of the LNC. I was in the LNC for 6 years. I know how massive the Libertarian Party's media reach is. I know the size of the email list, the Twitter feed, the Facebook page. And the fact that we cannot get that from our own people shows how badly the LNC wants there to be some Republican wash-up to be our nominee. They refused to cover everything. So before we go after somebody else's debates, let's at least make sure we use the amazing tools that we already have. And I've asked before and asked again, LNC, put this debate on your media.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Arvin.
And not to get into it, but they've all been notified of this debate, so it's up to them now. Ball's in your court. Not okay. Next is Andy Williams Jr. Go ahead.
So, I believe the question was something about what we're going to do to get on the stage. Was that?
Yes. As the Libertarian nominee, what will you do in the general election to get on the debate stage and give the Libertarian Party the attention it deserves?
Well, to get on the debate stage, whether I get the nomination or not, I will be suing the Republicans and the Democrats next. I am taking this liberty fight to the courtroom because it don't work in the boardroom anymore. And if anybody didn't know, on the 13th of April, I sued Illinois Governor Pritzker and Donald Trump for violating my civil liberties. So now that I've gotten a taste of due process law and how it works and the fraudulent statements that they promise every time they're going to get elected, they haven't come through with those promises. So right now, with my background coming in the courtroom fighting pro se, it's bringing a lot of attention in Chicago right now. Like I've gotten, since I posted it on the 13th, I've gotten a lot of feedback, and what the streets is basically saying, make sure you keep it about the oppressed. Make sure you keep it about, us ex-offenders out here, because that's the overlooked audience. So now I'm grabbing an audience who, one, never would even think about the Libertarian Party, and two, not even be registered to vote, and now we're voting Vote for Hope. So that's what I plan to do, and I got a CD coming out, Hood Candidate.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Moving on to Mr. John McAfee.
He's muted.
Hold up. My bad. Start the time now. Go ahead, Mr. McAfee.
If anybody believes that if either Adam or myself is nominated, that they will keep us off of the debate stage, then you need to Google me. I have across all my social media almost 2 million followers. I have 1.1 million on Twitter alone. And my followers are avid followers. They include the Winklevoss twins, Val Kilmer, every major corporate executive in technology business, and every major exec in media. Now, if we're not on that stage, I will raise such a ruckus that they will be forced to allow us. I'm sorry. I like using brute force when nothing else works, and nothing else seems to be working. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McAfee. Mr. John Monds.
Well, there's a couple of different strategies we can approach this issue with. One is we seek allies. I mean, we're good on the issues. So we need to reach out to Second Amendment groups. We need to reach out to the NAACP about criminal justice reform. We get that. So let them make the argument. That's one way we can approach it. Another one is the lawsuits. I think that is, a viable option of filing lawsuits. I'm party to a ballot access lawsuit here in Georgia on the federal level. And the third thing is this. I would like to have a graphic that shows Biden on the left, me in the middle, and Trump on the right, with a caption that says, "Why won't they let me debate?" And put that out in public and let people get incensed about the unfairness on how the party is treated. So I think those are all, viable options.
Thank you, Mr. Monds. Is there anybody that I missed in that question? My notes got shuffled around a little bit. Just want to make sure everybody got.
I didn't hear Vermin.
Vermin what?
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. No.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Vermin.
All right. Well, then we'll move along. Now, the Libertarian Party is the third most notable party in the country, which, as we all know, means people don't know anything about us. As the Libertarian nominee, what would be your strategy to getting more eyes on the party and swaying people to join the party? And we will start with Mr. Sam Robb.
Okay. One of the things that we need to do is reach out to Democrat and Republican voters. That's all there is to it. In 2016, we got about 4.5 million votes. The Libertarian Party membership accounted for something like 0.16% of that. We're talking nothing. What happened was we reached Democrat and Republican voters. We need to continue that, and we need to amplify it. We need to get to 10%, to 15%. We need to tell people, go out and find them and tell them that we are concerned about the things that they're concerned about. That we have the same worries, we have the same issues, and any one of these candidates is going to be able to do that 1,000 times better than Biden or Trump, because we've all been there. We're the ones dealing with this COVID-19 right now in the quarantine. We know what they're going through. We know what questions they have. We know what problems they have, and we know how to show them that liberty is the solution.
Mr. Robb, Mr. Vermin Supreme.
Again, it comes back to very specifically my specific offer that I'm putting on the table of harnessing my awesome meme and internet celebrity energy, using the humor and the boot to propel the Libertarian Party into the future by bringing in a lot of interest and so many eyeballs and all of these young people. Essentially, of course, that is the hook. And then the pivot is towards the real libertarian principles for which we stand and the libertarian solutions to societal ills. But utilizing my viral image and the built-in audience hungers for this type of, and using that as a tool to grow the Libertarian Party, as I've done it in the contest, y'all recently. Y'all better step it up a bit. Just saying. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Supreme. Mr. Arvin Vohra.
As libertarians, we need to stop treating every conversation, every political issue, every discussion as if it's the last one we're ever going to have. I want to tell you about the first time I heard Adam Kokesh speak. I thought he was crazy, but it wasn't the last time I heard him speak. It wasn't the last of his YouTube videos that I watched. It wasn't the last of his articles or books that I read. And over time, I started to get curious about these crazy ideas, and I adopted so many of them and find them so inspiring today because of that. We need to be inspiring. And that means we need to recognize that people are going to change. We have to inspire people to change. And that begins with standing on our real principles, not watering them down, not making them status friendly, but standing on them and letting people over time realize why these principles that seem so crazy when you first hear about them are the exact solution that we need today, right now.
Mr. Vohra, Mr. Andy Williams Jr.
So right now it's over 1,000 people running for president of the United States. Those 1,000 people are overlooked. They're already organized. They probably already have teams. And part of, for me, is educating the hood, the community, the neighborhood, the disenfranchised about libertarian principles, because when you look at our platform, everything that these candidates promised they're going to do has already been our principles and platforms since 1971. They just don't know about it. So with me coming out, my little rap song talking about freedom, liberty, justice for all, Malcolm X, the new ballot or the bullet, I'm grabbing an audience and saying, hey, join the Libertarian Party, because we are the party that makes freedom our only issue. And if you're tired of being oppressed, you're tired of broken promises, join this party. That's what I'm doing.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Mr. John McAfee.
You're not going to like this, none of you will. Political parties are the root cause of America's problems. I am a Republican. No, I'm a Democrat. I'm a Libertarian. No, you're not any of those things, people. You are yourself. The Libertarian Party, if it had any sense at all, would have the job of acquiring members, teaching them what's possible about government, and setting them free on the fucking world. No, people. Why am I in the Libertarian Party? Because you are a convenient platform, and nothing in your platform offends me, like everything about the Democrats and Republicans. But I'm not, I've paid my party dues, but am I a Libertarian? Fuck no. I'm John McAfee, as you are all individuals. Sorry, thank you.
McAfee. Mr. John Monds.
Three things I'd like to mention. One, I am committed as the nominee to go at least once to every state in the country and make the pitch. And that's to help where the grunt work is done. And that's on the state and local level. Two, we need to actually shame people into their support. And how do we do that? First of all, in a supposedly free country, we have the best and the most free platform and espouse that. And that's what we do as the Libertarian Party. And then ask the American voters in all these 50 states, is there not one county in your state that actually will vote for freedom? I think we ought to start on break it down to the county level. There's over 3,100 counties in the United States. And to my knowledge, we have not been winning any of them in a national election. Let's look at the county level and shame people by saying we are the party of freedom. And if you want a free country, you need to support the Libertarian Party.
Thank you, Mr. Monds. Moving on to Judge Jim Gray.
Thank you. I do deeply believe that there's only one mainstream political party in our country today, and it's the Libertarians. And if we get our word out, and we've been a little remiss in doing it, we represent children. We represent them because of the deficit. We're the only ones that speak out on it. We represent the parents. We empower them to choose how they can get their best education for their child. We talk about, yes, the United States has 5% of the world's population and 25% of its prisoners. We speak for you, reforming that criminal justice system. I, as a judge, say we have tens and tens of thousands of people in prison today that should not be there. We're the only ones that stand for them. We are the ones that will represent the live and let live. We are responsible at all levels of society. We are, in effect, for you as a community. When it comes down to it, like we're talking today, it's the community that responds, the community that does it best, the individual that does it best. And that's where we need to bring our message, and we will be understood and we'll be successful.
Judge Gray. Moving on to Mr. Jacob Hornberger. Go ahead.
I think the cardinal sin of any political race is to run a boring campaign. You need an excited base in order to succeed in this thing. And I say that, if we play it safe, yeah, we get our 3% or whatever. But if you act boldly and you run a campaign based purely on principles, you got a chance for a big payoff. You don't have a big payoff chance when you're playing it safe. And we're entitled, after 49 years, of a big payoff. And taking the battle right to these people that have caused so much death and destruction around the world. I want to say something about this debate tonight, and those of you debating. I missed the conventions, but you all tonight are charging my batteries. You're talking about dismantling, abolishing, freedom, liberty. I mean, this is what we need in this party, not reforming the tyranny and oppression that Democrats and Republicans have forced it upon our land. We're talking about liberty, and liberty necessarily means dismantling infringements on liberty.
Thank you, Mr. Hornberger. Moving on to Mr. Adam Kokesh.
Thank you, Dan. I want to thank Arvin, first of all, for that great shout out and the respect for what I've done in my career of activism over 12 years now in waking people up, in freeing minds, and converting people to libertarianism. I think of all the candidates, I have by far the best track record there. And we have to look at what works. And with all due respect to the other candidates, it's kind of a fantasy to expect that somebody whose message hasn't gotten out outside of the movement or grown a bigger following or name ID is suddenly going to get that traction as the nominee. I think I have more social media following than anyone in this race except maybe Vermin Supreme and John McAfee. And if you're serious, and John Monds has a great record for his vote total, but if you want what works, those are your serious options. This message of localization that I'm bringing to the table, what's been working is talking about issues that affect people. It's why we have in our coalitions, gun owners for Kokesh, exotic entertainers for Kokesh, first responders, stoners, Christians, genders and sexual minority, and I think most importantly, victims of family law for Kokesh, and that's a very underspoken to issue.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to Mr. Ken Armstrong.
Well, thanks. Pardon me. There's really two areas of approach in our campaign. You know, in martial arts, you never focus on the target. You focus past the target, and that's the way we've been since we got on the road a year ago. We've covered 51,000 miles by car, 47 states, met with thousands of people. And the measure of that is none of you had heard of me a year ago, and I'm sitting here talking with you now. And so we can talk about who's got, you know, the bigger group and the bigger following and everything. In terms of percentage of growth, I went from 0 to where I am in less than a year, and that measures how successful we can be in developing a campaign, both inside the party and outside the party. We've got affinity groups that we're working with, going to meet with a group on Tuesday morning. That's how we have been growing everything.
Thank you. Next is Mr. Dan Taxation is Theft. Behrman, go ahead.
So I want to actually say I think John McAfee is the correct answer so far. But we need to look at this like, okay, what are we selling, right? We're selling something, right? And when you go to close your eyes and picture going to a car dealership and the dealer comes out and he says, hey, I got this car right here. I know you're here. You want to buy a car. I got this car right here. You should buy this one because I'm going to get ballot access. If you buy this one, nobody's going to buy that fucking car. But if the different dealer comes up to you and says, hey, what do you need? Oh, you want a fast car? Check out this one. It's the fastest on the lot. Or he says, oh, you need fuel economy? Hey, check out this one over here. We are not telling people what they want, what's going to solve their problems. What are they coming with? What are we selling them? We're selling them an idea. Also, I don't have enough time to answer this question. So while everyone's answering the next question, I'm going to live stream the longer version of this answer on my Facebook page, facebook.com/Behrman2020.
Good plugs. Thank you, Mr. Behrman. And lastly is Mr. Kenneth Blevins. Go ahead.
All right, how do we get more eyes on the party? We need to reach out to those that don't vote and those that are in the Democratic and Republican Party that are dissatisfied with where they're headed. Last summer, I went to a Robert O'Rourke rally in Tulsa, and I talked to a lot of the people there about the Libertarian Party. I got in a it wasn't heated on my end, but heated on her end discussion with one of the moms demand action against gun violence supporters about actual rights and how the federal government is infringing on the rights of those impoverished and the minorities. But we need to reach out to those people who are dissatisfied with the regular system and get them to come and look at our platform. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blevins, and thank you, candidates. Now, when I personally realized that I was a libertarian, and started paying attention to the LP running in 2015. One thing that to me set the Libertarian Party apart from the others was their asking of one specific question and the honest answering of that question in one of the debates. And it was, well, I'll ask the same question. In the end, in about a month, there can only be one nominee for the LP. If you yourself were not running, who would you vote for the Libertarian presidential nominee and why? And we will start this time with Judge Jim Gray.
I'm sorry, I just talk about my background. I think that we have shown that all of us have things to offer. I will support the eventual nominee of the party. But as far as the individuals, we're all kinship in some ways. In some ways we differ. I think that Larry Sharp and I are strong candidates, and I'm proud to have Larry running with me. By the way, I heard that Craig Whitney has joined and abandoned his campaign, has endorsed us. But we're going to be a consensus candidate. I will support whomever the nominee is.
Thank you, Judge Gray. Jacob Hornberger.
I will endorse whoever is on this stage that gets nominated, and I will vote for him. I want to use this time to address Adam Kokesh. Adam, when I was asked, and when you asked me Wednesday night about how I felt about you and your platform, I felt bad after that debate because I didn't give a complete answer. You know that I've disagreed with your platform, but I want you to know that I deeply admire what you have done and where you stand. You get it. You want to dismantle all this tyranny and oppression. You understand that that's a necessary prerequisite to freedom. And I may disagree with your plan, but I deeply admire your spirit on liberty. I also want you to know that I deeply admire your civil disobedience. It takes a lot of courage to do that. And finally, what you and Pete Eyre did on Cop Block was unbelievably phenomenal. And that was why my foundation hired Pete Eyre, because of what you guys were doing. I disagree with your plan, but I have the utmost admiration for you as a person, and I want to make that clear.
Thank you, Mr. Hornberger. Mr. Kokesh, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, I would just take the opportunity to say thank you very much, Jacob. That is hugely appreciated and a beautiful turn in attitude. I think, you know, coming in a little bit late on this race, you didn't get a sense of how we were all working together as a team and the spirit in which we're supporting each other. And it's great to hear that you're taking more of that tone now. And I think everybody who's in this debate would say that we're going to support whoever the nominee is. And it's really beautiful to hear Jacob on board with that spirit. And I greatly appreciate that.
Thank you, sir. And next is Mr. Adam Kokesh. Would you like to give your actual response now?
Yes, thank you, Dan. So I would echo the sentiment that whoever the nominee is, we have a lot of great candidates espousing a lot of great principles. All of them represent someone who would clearly be better than Cheeto Jesus or Sleepy Creepy Joe. And I would be happy to organize veterans for whomever the nominee is. But my pick would be, and I'll answer the question directly and honestly here, between Arvin and Dan Behrman and John McAfee. And I would be looking for, at the convention, who has organized the strongest campaign, who's going to look to do the best in the general election. I think those are the ones who offer a platform that really backs up libertarian principles, and providing that alternative to the American people is absolutely critical in 2020.
Mr. Kokesh. Mr. Ken Armstrong.
So I think we got a bromance going here. We're all in agreement that we'll vote for the nominee. In fact, I guarantee you I will not vote for anyone who's not the Libertarian nominee. How's that? But beyond that, I want to just, since we're all in agreement on that, I want to take a few seconds to talk about our process. I'm going to be spending the next 4 years, whether I'm president of the United States or just a guy in the party, working to see us fix this thing where we only have 5 months for our nominee to campaign after the nomination. We need a much better system, because we complain about the lack of public awareness, but we've constrained our campaigns that we're playing to an audience of 1,000 delegates for a year, and then we got to jump onto the global stage and make our campaigns known. We need to fix that.
Mr. Armstrong. Next is Dan Taxation. Is Theft Vermin? Go ahead.
it's a tough call. We have a lot of great candidates running, and I'd probably vote for any of them if they got the nomination. But I would particularly look for somebody who understands marketing and message delivery and sales, because the Democrats and Republicans have it easy. I'm going to sell you a pile of free shit. I'm going to sell you a different pile of free shit. Oh, free shit. That's wonderful. You don't have to sell it that hard, but freedom is a little bit harder. So somebody who understands this, that is the most important thing that we need on any campaign in the Libertarian Party, because we're not trying to get somebody, we're not trying to get votes. We have to change minds.
Thank you, Mr. Behrman. Next is Mr. Kenneth Blevins.
Anybody, this debate would be a excellent choice over the left or the right. I mean, all these guys are great people and have great ideas. I have a couple of guys that I really love. Sam Robb with what he wants to do with bringing everybody in. Adam, Dan, you guys with your campaign and how you guys reach out to people. Jim Gray's got a good resume. Jacob Hornberger's has a good platform. Vermin, he's got a great resume. John's got, I mean, everybody. Andy's good, but just any of these guys would be great. And it's hard. I mean, I'll stand behind any of them, but it's really just whoever the delegates choose. That's who I'm standing behind.
Thank you, Mr. Blevins. Moving on to Mr. Vermin Supreme.
Justin Amash, he's so dreamy. I hope he's the one. Unless the Democrats run a real pony. In that case, then I might vote for the pony. But between Justin Amash and a pony, I don't know. It's a tough choice. But naturally, I fully entrust the selection process with the delegates, and will respect their decision, and hope to work with whoever is representing the party this election year. Thank you. I'm Vermin Supreme.
Thank you, Mr. Supreme. Next is Mr. Arvin Vohra.
I'm looking for somebody who can engage in multiple conversations and persuade people over time. Somebody that has a deep understanding of liberty and has considered things from many unexpected angles. So I would support either of the two people that I've learned the most from during this campaign. That's Adam Kokesh and Dan Behrman. Both I've learned a ton from during this campaign about libertarianism. I've watched them explain so deeply the nuances of libertarianism to so many people. I do, though, want to pick a little bit of a bone with Adam. Adam, what you said, it has not been my experience. Before I was vice chair, I didn't get that much media. When I was vice chair, I got a lot more. With second term, even more. As a presidential candidate, even more. So I do believe that whoever the nominee is going to see a massive exponential increase in coverage. So I really want to see somebody that can have those conversations with the American people. I certainly think you're one, and I certainly think that Dan is one.
Who all was called out in that, Craig?
Everyone. No.
Yeah, just a real quick response. Arvin, thank you. And I would certainly concede your point generally that winning the nomination is a multiplier. I would just say, let's start by multiplying the strongest thing we can.
Yeah. Mr. Behrman, I believe you were also called out. Would you like to go ahead?
Those are the two I heard.
Thank you.
All right. Good enough. Moving on to Mr. Andy Williams Jr.
Well, I joined the party to be a libertarian. So as a libertarian, whoever gets the nomination, we're all one liberty, no matter which way we get it, on a ski board, a skateboard, a jet, it don't matter. I'm voting libertarian. That's what I'm campaigning for, libertarian.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to Mr. John McAfee. Mr. McAfee, go ahead.
I am emotionally and spiritually obligated to say Adam Kokesh, and I do, in fact, love his platform. I would like to caution us all, please. I believe, and if anybody has any sense that none of us are going to be president, I really believe this. And so does the general public of America. And if we act like we are going to win, we will be the butt of everybody's joke. Would it not be better to say, hey, we are facing Goliath and David is not with us? We will do what we can to tell you what is wrong and what could be done, people. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McAfee. Mr. John Monds.
Well, I think I'm like most the delegates out there. I know who my number one choice is, but I haven't made up my mind as far as who number two is. Like the others have commented, I think we have a lot of great candidates. I'm much more satisfied with the quality of candidates we have this go round than the past three cycles, and that is for sure. So I'm actually excited about the whoever the nominee is. So, and I'd be glad to support the nominee and also the party, because I think that's important. The mission and what the party as a whole is doing, that we go, full, force ahead in supporting our mission, and that's freedom. So, the best freedom candidate, hopefully, is who the delegates will decide.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Monds. Moving on to Mr. Sam Robb.
What was the question again? I've been listening to everybody talking and I've lost track of what's going on. I think we're all talking about how much we really appreciate each other, because this is a great team. This really is. One of the things that I appreciate is, as long as we avoid, as Mark Whitney says, the certified pre-owned Republican, we are putting up a dozen or more people who are committed to the party, who really want to see things work this time. We want to make it work. We want to get out there. We want to be energized, and we want to be energetic, and we want to see the Libertarian Party win hearts and minds. We know that it's a long shot, but we're going to tilt at that windmill anyways, and we're going to give it our best shot. As far as anybody here, yeah, if they're the nominee, I'm absolutely going to support them. I'm going to go all out. Delegates, what you need to do is figure out who you think is going to be the best standard bearer, the best one to go up in front of the American people and connect with them and draw them in. Because once you get them drawn in, you've got Vermin talking to them, you've got Dan talking to them, you've got Adam talking to them, you've got McAfee talking to them, you've got a bunch of people working on them and telling them, hey, this is where you need to be. But that's the decision you need to make. And whatever it is, I'm behind you.
Thank you, Mr. Robb. Anybody who was called out in there want to respond?
Happy to be a part of that team.
Names mentioned.
Here, here.
Right. All right. Thank you very much. And thank you very much, candidates, for your well-considered and inspirational answers. We will now move into the closing statements section. As stated at the beginning of the debate, we have been racking up all the seconds. Craig, have you got those all figured out?
I do.
The seconds that you guys have gone over time, and we will be removing those seconds from your closing statements, ending on a sour note. Craig, let me know when you're ready.
I can be ready now.
Okay, perfect. All right, let's move into closing statements. We will begin with Mr. Vermin Supreme, who Craig, how much time does he have?
His full 90 seconds.
Vermin Supreme has full 90 seconds. Go ahead, Mr. Vermin Supreme.
Thank you. In a very short time, the Libertarian Party is going to be given a very stark choice to make. Which time stream will you choose? Will it be the most amazing, outrageous, over-the-top, educational, informational, entertaining, legendary campaign that this country has ever seen? Or will it be something a little more sedate? I hear you asking yourself, can the LP put up a wacky entertainer candidate and not be thought of as a joke party? And I say yes. It just is all in the framing. We are a serious party with serious ideas, but the duopoly presidential electoral system has risen to the level of a joke. With love and spite, here is Vermin Supreme, hashtag in on the joke. Can we, the Libertarian Party, use humor as a weapon against the duopoly? Yes, we can. Can we use humor as a tool for outreach? I believe so. Education? Yes. A tool for recruitment? Yes. Can we use humor and satire as a tool for spreading liberty? Yes, we can. Please, won't you join me for a more liberty-filled future? Follow me to victory! Victory! Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Supreme. Next is Mr. Arvin Vohra. Craig, how much time does he have?
He is shy 1 second. So
okay. 89 seconds, Mr. Vohra.
I've talked a lot over the last years about abolishing the most sacred parts of the state, abolishing public schools, the entire welfare state, getting government entirely out of healthcare. And today, we are seeing what happens when you have a government that fixates on imaginary problems and leaves the people unprepared to face real ones. The problems we're facing today are created by government policies. We have a shortage of doctors because the government won't let the best doctors in Europe and Asia practice in the United States. We have shortages of medicines because the government won't let Americans buy medicines from overseas. We have a shortage of equipment because of high tariffs and other anti-trade policies. What I've argued for this entire time has been to reject government involvement in everything. If I'm elected, I will happily serve as partner-in-chief, and I will work to fire, dismantle, downsize, and get rid of every part of government that I possibly can. We're on the verge of a possible golden age in our economy if we can get government out of it. We have all the instigators of change. We have a worldwide crisis. We have everything that could put us there. But we need the courage to do that. Today, I stand here with people that I've looked up to years, Jacob Hornberger, Adam Kokesh, John McAfee. I studied you in college. I mean, this is an amazing group to be a part of. I'm honored to be here. And if I'm your nominee, I will be honored to fight for your principles to the United States and for the entire election cycle of 2020.
Thank you, Mr. Vohra. Next up is Mr. Andy Williams, Jr.
Mr. Williams has his full 90 seconds.
I look at the NAACP and the ACLU, and they defend freedom. They file lawsuits, and they hold people accountable.
Sorry, Mr. Williams. We've got trouble with your audio.
What up?
Go ahead and restart.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, yes. You're good.
Okay. The NAACP and the ACLU, they defend freedom by filing lawsuits. I believe the Libertarian Party, all of our principles, they deal with infringing upon somebody's constitutional rights. The voting rights for the ex-offenders. We have the ability to file lawsuits on behalf of the states that do not allow ex-offenders to vote. I have those complaints. I've seen the states that win. I got those rulings. I believe us as the Libertarian Party should be doing that now because we will do something that nobody has never done. We will not be talking about when we're elected, this is what we're going to do. We start doing it now. We will grow our party bigger than any time ever before because we've done something that no other party has done. We are really advocates, activists. Each one have talked about it, what they're doing. Now let's show them. I'm doing it by my example, by taking the governor's order and holding them accountable in the courtroom. That same model, that's the same thing we do when we talk about we want to legalize prostitution. Find us some women out there, sue on their rights, but then also give them a choice on how to, better themselves and if they're on drugs or whatever it is, because we still got to get to the root cause of it. But that's what we should be doing to move our party forward. I'm the hood candidate. I'm for the people because I am part of the people. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Next is Mr. John McAfee.
Mr. McAfee is down to 49 seconds.
Well, hold up. Sorry.
Go ahead, sir.
Go ahead and restart. Had you muted there?
Yes. Okay. I determined about 10 years ago that it's actions rather than words that matter. I stopped paying my taxes. As a result, after 8 years, I was bugged by the IRS, and then the grand jury was convened. I built a distributed exchange. It has no know your customer or for anti-money laundering, and the SEC is now filing a grand jury to charge me with SEC crimes. I'm just doing now what I should have been doing my whole fucking life. And when you get old and you have less to lose, you get braver. Thank you.
McAfee. John Monds.
How much time?
You have 63 seconds, Mr. Monds.
Hot damn. I think success ought to matter. I've been active in the party for over 15 years. I've ran campaigns that have gotten 1.8 million votes for the Libertarian Party. And we have to realize there's two things and two measures of success. One, the number of votes we can get. And I've already have a proven track record in all my races that I can do that. Two is buzz. I think my nomination will bring a lot of buzz from non-traditional libertarians and bringing people to the party. And the party needs to realize the message is the most important thing, because socialists do not win elections. Yet they have changed the paradigm and where the American public and how they think and believe what government should do. We need to work on changing the paradigm. And when we're successful with that, the other parties will fight to adopt what we believe in if we can get the public to believe it also. Thank you. Monds2020.com.
Thank you, Mr. Monds. Next up is Mr. Sam Robb. Great.
Mr. Robb has 47 seconds left.
Okay, so I burned through half my time. SamRobb2020.com if you want to find out more about me. If you want to join the Libertarian Party or you want to renew your membership, lp.org/SamRobb. We all have a contest going on. You can find your favorite candidate there. As a matter of fact, I have a contest going on. If you register, regardless of which candidate, you send me an email at samrobb2020.com. I will go ahead and enter you in for a drawing for a Joe Exotic candle. There we go. Who's exotic? You can figure that out. I want you to think about what you've seen here today, and I want you to think about your friends who aren't in the Libertarian Party, your friends who are Democrats or Republicans or independents or just not interested in voting. One of these clips is going to appeal to them. Find it, put it in front of them, and get them thinking about the Libertarian Party.
Mr. Robb. Next is Mr. Jacob Hornberger.
He has his entire 90 seconds.
There's no doubt that we're living in some very difficult, dark times. But there's one light that's shining through this darkness, and that's the Libertarian movement and the Libertarian Party. We are the ones that are brightening this darkness, and we have to continue doing that. I want to pose to the American people a very simple question. If you like the direction this country's heading in, if you know you like where we are now, vote for Biden or Trump. Doesn't matter. You're going to get the same thing. You want a different direction for America toward life and liberty and peace and prosperity and health and harmony with the people of the world, join up with us. But in order to do that, we need a bold campaign, one that separates economy in the state, the healthcare in the state, money in the state, that ends the evil, immoral, and racially bigoted war on drugs, where we raise people's vision to a higher level. But at the same time, we excite our base, which is essential to an exciting campaign. Imagine if you were in 1855 America and a libertarian comes up and says, I'm working on reforming slavery, where we can get shorter work hours, and I'm working to gradually reduce slavery. I would yawn. If somebody comes up to me and says, Jacob, would you join me in abolishing slavery, dismantling the structure of slavery? Man, sign me up. I'm ready to help you out here, because liberty necessarily depends on dismantling, not reforming or fixing infringements on liberty. I'm Jacob Hornberger, jacobforliberty.com.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hornberger. Moving on to Mr. Adam Kokesh.
Mr. Kokesh, you have 90 seconds.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and to everybody who helped make this debate happen. Dan, you've done a wonderful job as a moderator. What we are offering with Team End the Fed is a practical policy that immediately improves everyone's lives. Localization speaks to everyone from soccer moms to Bernie bros to deplorables, because the more local government is, the more customized it is. As Americans, let's stop arguing issue by issue and instead take issue with people forcing their will on us from thousands of miles away. Localization appeals to everyone. Even Donald Trump said he'd vote for me as long as he can be president of a state with no Muslims or Mexicans. Oh, and somebody else pays for the wall, of course. Localization is the cure for polarization because everybody gets what they want and we can stop arguing. So let's give every American what they want and stop the duopoly. So I think as a candidate, what I bring to this race is not just my proven record on messaging, waking people up, winning people over to the message and to the party, but an issue credibility and a hustle that nobody else can match. I'm going to get around every single day in the general election. I'm going to be in a different city. We're going to do events nonstop. You're going to see the hustle that I've brought to my entire career as an activist. We are going to grow the movement, grow the party, and have the breakout year that the Libertarian Party deserves. If you are not a member and you're watching this debate, go right now, lp.org, and join the Libertarian Party, the party of principle.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mr. Kokesh. Mr. Ken Armstrong, you are next.
Mr. Armstrong has 74 seconds.
So, very simply speaking, I started by talking about qualifications, and I'll be very happy to stack my resume up against anybody that's with us here today. In international relations, in government management, in healthcare management, in nonprofit management, in all of the fields I've worked in, I'll be happy to stand that up against anybody here. But more important than that is the ability to convey our message outside the echo chamber of the party. You know, we've got some wonderful people here, but they're used to speaking inside the echo chamber of the party and speaking to issues that, yes, they resonate well with our base. They'll get delegates to nominate them. But once you get out on the street to the American public, you need to be able to speak in terms that the American people understand. And I've spent a year doing that already. And we've got a lot of traction with average Americans who really appreciate what the Libertarian Party is about because I've taken the time to meet them and talk to them about it. Ken Armstrong, Armstrong2020.com.
Thank you, Mr. Armstrong. Mr. Dan, Taxation is Theft Behrman.
Mr. Behrman.
So first of all, I just want to thank you guys all so much. This is the best birthday party ever. I'm going to go back to work on Monday and tell all my developer friends I spent Friday night hanging out with John McAfee. They're going to love that. I am the only candidate to pledge support outside of himself to Vermin Supreme's free pony business. As long as he can operate it without government funding, he will be able to operate it without licenses and without bailouts. He can breed and distribute all he wants. Forget about resumes. Before we're selling a candidate to the public, we have to sell the idea. That's what we're looking for, someone who can sell this idea. And that is why I have created TITFest 2020. Of course, that stands for Taxation is Theft Fest 2020. This will be the future's leading breeding grounds for libertarian minds. It's going to be coming up in this May 16th and 17th. And from Mexico, this is Dan, Taxation is Theft Behrman, Behrman2020.com.
Thank you, Mr. Behrman. Next is Mr. Kenneth Blevins.
All right. I'm not a politician, never claimed to be, never want to be. But if you want to learn more about me and my platform, go to blevinsforpresident.org or blevinsforpresident.2020 or blevinsforpresident2020 on Facebook. And you can find out a lot about me there. I'm just thrilled to be here. Thank you, Daniel, for having us. And I just want everybody know that all these guys are great, and any of them would make a great president. So just go to lp.org and find out more about us, and have a great day.
Thank you, Mr. Blevins. And lastly, rounding out the night is Judge Jim Gray. Craig, what does he have?
Judge Jim Gray.
And thank you all. And Craig and Dan, I echo, you've done a really fine job, and thank you for all of that. And thanks for our listeners and viewers for watching. It was Milton Friedman, who was a real intellectual, boots on the ground person, who said, we should judge our programs by the results, not their good intentions. All these government programs maybe have good intentions, but they fail us. What really works is local. What really works is individuals, private enterprise, private foundations. We need someone to get that word out there. And since I came out in 1992 doing libertarian work, arguing against our nation's drug policy, I've been on Stossel, I've been on O'Reilly twice. He didn't like me particularly, but he invited me back. I can carry this message so that the normal Americans, the average Americans will rethink, maybe big government isn't helping me. Maybe it would be better for me to choose where my child goes to school instead of the government. All of that. I think I can do that. Plus, I have a true asset, and that is Larry Sharp has agreed to be my running mate. Go to graysharp2020.com. We will help the down ballot libertarian candidates. We've done that for the last 8 to 10 years. We will continue to do that. We've raised money for them, gotten exposure for them. That's where it works, at the local level, and Gray Sharp will be able to bring that home. Let's band together. We are the right message. We can do this, and by thunder, we will do you proud.
Thank you, Judge Gray. And that concludes our debate. Candidates, thank you so very much for your time in joining us tonight. For any candidates who wish to join us, if there are any, we will also be hosting an impromptu Q&A/after party immediately following the stream, or 15 minutes probably after the stream. We'll take a break. But no obligation. You can join if you want to. The link, if you want to join, is in the chat stream on Zoom. And for people who want to watch whoever joins, you can find it at fb.com/the system is down. Once again, candidates, that link is there. You can share it around, do what you wish. But thank you so much for your time. We hope to see you there. But regardless, thank you so much. And
I need to know. What is it? A different link? We don't just hang out here. Why don't we just hang out here? Wouldn't that be easier?
It would be, but same idea, but different link, so we can end this feed and people can go to bed.
Where do we find the link, my friend?
It is in the chat on Zoom. There, you should have
not possible. I don't know Zoom that well, so I will not be able to attend if I don't get a link through email. Or
email it, because it's going to disappear as soon as you close it.
Because we are libertarians, I see no reason not to just leave this stream open. We'll take a 10-minute break again, and whoever wants to stay can stay, and we'll have a hangout after.
Oh, so we're leaving the stream open. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
You win, John.
Cool.
You win.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm an old man. I don't have time for nonsense. Let's do it the easiest way. That's what I say. All right.
I'll stick around for questions.
All right, sounds good. We'll be back in 10 minutes. Whoever wants to stick around, please do so. Hey guys, thanks for sticking around all the way to the end. I hope you enjoyed our libertarian presidential debate that we hosted. As we talked about briefly in the debate, I tried keeping most of my opinions to myself, but the Libertarian Party isn't doing great, in my opinion, at getting the word out there about these debates, about these candidates, about their platforms. And I wanted to do my part, especially in these times where we don't have conventions, we don't have debates typically going on. I wanted to do my part to help get it out there to as many people as possible. So that's what we did. And I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, because it took some work. It took some work to wrangle 12 libertarian candidates. My God. But it was a good time. And it was well worth the effort that was put into it. We also, Craig and Kayla and I, the next day, we went out and we shot some guns at things because, need to have a little celebration, blow off a little steam, and just relax after this accomplishment. So we'll probably be putting out some video clips of that here shortly, too, because it was a fun time. I got to help my son shoot his first gun. I got to help Kayla, I think it was her first time shooting a gun, at least her first time shooting an AR and first time shooting a shotgun, I believe. Anyway, stay tuned for that. We'll be posting that here soon. But yeah, thank you guys again. Anybody who is a patron of the show in the Downers Club, it is because of you guys that this thing was possible. It's because of you guys that we were able to live stream this successfully with no dropouts, with no major glitches or anything like that. So thank you guys so much. And if you are not a member of the Downers Club, please consider supporting. Please consider signing up to get bonus content every single week at patreon.com/the system is down. And be sure to tune into our Friday episode with Scott McElroy. It is the QAnon Chronicles, where Scott looks at everything that's going on in the world, everything that's going on in the news, and does so through a Q lens. He does it in a skeptical manner, and maybe not as skeptical on the theory as I am, but it's fascinating nonetheless, and I would highly recommend you check it out, because Scott's an awesome dude, and he has a lot of great insight on things that are conspiratorial and fun. So check out QAnon Chronicles every single Friday, wherever you're listening to this right now, or by going to QAnonChronicles.com. And be sure to join the System is Down forum to keep this conversation going, to keep the conversation about these candidates going. Help get the word out there, because they are having a bit of a struggle, an uphill battle in this campaign, being able to get the message of liberty out to people. So assist them and come join the forum and keep the conversation going at tsidpod.com/forum, or by going to Facebook and typing in The System is Down forum. Also, please like, share, and subscribe. Click all the buttons on all the platforms. It helps us tremendously, especially in these crazy times. We need all the help that we can get to be able to keep our stuff even on some of these platforms. We were recently demonetized on YouTube for being harmful content, whatever that means. They did not give us any more of an explanation than that, but we are demonetized, which is a bit of a badge of honor in these days, because that means that we're probably talking about something of importance. We're supposed to be doing a local news story. They're supposed to be coming out and interviewing me on the day of the debate. The guy called me in the morning and said that he was excited to do it, and then later on he informed me that the story got pulled, and you could probably guess why. They cover podcasts and things, so it's not that. I'm guessing it's probably because of our harmful content, like talking to libertarians. So help us out. Please go click all the buttons, all the things that millennials do, and help us beat the algorithms in these crazy times. But I think that's it. I think that's it for now. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you guys sticking it out through this marathon of really long debate, a really long form official debate format that we tried to put together, and I hope that we did it justice. I hope that we did these candidates justice in getting their message out there. If you would be so kind as to join me again next Monday morning, I, of course, will be here first thing, if not sooner, with some more uncomfortable content for your greedy little ear canals. Until then, please, ladies and gentlemen, continue to question everything, stay uncomfortable, and I'll talk to you then. Thanks.
This has been a Goulash Media production. goulashmedia.net.
This concludes our broadcast day. Click.